Hello, hello. Welcome to the latest CJ Hoops podcast. But I really wanted to have this episode. Chuck and I teased this a little bit at the end of last week's. For those that are listening, please follow us at CJ Hoops Pod on all social platforms. We're also going to be coming out with a new recording schedule. We'll be releasing episodes Monday and Friday, so please make sure to like, rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. On last week's episode, Chuck and I had teased a little bit about teams that we just felt were asleep at the wheel throughout the offseason. We've now had a couple days of free agency. We've gotten through the draft. Summer League is somehow already starting. We have the California Classic. Now we'll have the Vegas Summer League starting this weekend. Really excited to see what fans overreact to their rookies playing well in Summer League and thinking that's going to have any, or playing poorly and drawing big conclusions about the success or failure of their rookies after a couple of meaningless games playing against mostly G Leaguers and overseas players. But we had a lot of teams that we wanted to discuss. Most notably, the team we didn't get to on last week's episode that I wanted to chat with you about were the Los Angeles Lakers. So to set the stage a little bit, I believe it was Thursday morning, Shams' report comes out that the Lakers have agreed to a sign and trade for restricted free agent center Walker Kessler, giving up 2 unprotected picks and 2 unprotected pick swaps for the right to sign Walker Kessler to a 4-year, $130 million contract, which makes him the 8th highest paid center in the NBA. We can get a little bit into that evaluation and Walker Kessler's fit. Within the hour, it seems, the Lakers had gotten a memo that you had to do all of your free agent business within a 90-minute span. They then proceed to sign Colin Sexton, 2 years, $19 million, player option on the second year. Quentin Grimes, 4 years, $60 million. And Mamu, 4 years, $52 million. Before I get into my take, I'm curious, when you saw all of those tweets come across your phone, what did you think of the Lakers' offseason strategy essentially being done before the 4th of July weekend?
I think in and of itself, it's too problematic to get the guys you want, right? If those were their targets and they went out and got them, I mean, I think in a nutshell, none of the contracts are particularly egregious. I think the Grimes value is solid. I think the Sexton value is solid. The Mamu surprised me a little bit. And the Kessler, I mean, certainly was a shocker, I think, in terms of going ahead and giving up that draft capital for him. But in a nutshell, I don't think the contract is egregious. So from that perspective, I didn't necessarily hate any of the signings. So what's a little strange is that they held those picks for so long and then used them for Kessler right as LeBron goes out the door, right? So when you were kind of in that middle of the West for a few years, desperately clinging on to those draft picks, it's a little shocking that they didn't use them to go on an all-in move at some point with LeBron to try and win one more. But I don't think anything in itself is egregious there personally, but I'm sure you may have a different opinion. So let's. Well,
you know what's so interesting. You know what's so interesting is, and we also forgot another Lakers transaction that came out, I think yesterday, maybe Friday, was they traded DeAndre Ayton for Jaden Hardy and 2 second-round picks. And while that's going to be laughed at, I do think it's important for the larger conversation of the Lakers of the Lakers do not own any of their draft picks until 2033. And after the DeAndre Ayton transaction, have 2 second-round picks. The 2 second-round picks they picked up in that transaction are the only 2 second-round picks they have until 2033. Where I netted out was very similar to yourself, but came to a different conclusion. I don't think that any of the signings, as you mentioned, were so far above the market rate that it had that sticker shock of I cannot believe it. I do have questions about Walker Kessler. He played 5 games last year. He's never played in a relevant basketball game in the NBA. Not all of that is his fault. The Jazz were trying to lose for his entire time with the team. So not exactly pointing the finger at him and saying he's not a serious basketball player. But for the Snowtime Lakers to now have three near maxes with Luka, Reeves, and Kessler. I think Kessler does fit well with Luka and Reeves, a rim running big that can block shots, grab offensive rebounds. My biggest point of contention with the Lakers' moves is, as you framed it, this was sort of their going all in. They held the picks, they used the picks. I don't know about you, but I don't think the Lakers are anywhere near the class of the San Antonio Spurs and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And so if you're putting your team in a situation where for the next few years, there's not going to be that much flexibility. Now, of course, they could trade Austin Reeves. They could try and package Vanderbilt or Dalton Connect. I'm not sure what the market is for the latter two. For Austin Reeves, he's sort of essential now to the team without LeBron being there. This isn't a case of, hey, he's the third ball handler, maybe we could repackage him. He's now sort of the second and only ball handler. I know you're a proud member of the Colin Sexton fan club. I am not. We'll get to see where that happens throughout the who's right there throughout this season. But I don't think they're anywhere close to the Spurs or the Thunder. And I know that's a very high bar, but if you're the Los Angeles Lakers and your only goal as a franchise is to win championships at the end of the season, I felt this was a very short-term incentivized move. The part that I'm curious about, and we'll see in the reporting, is if Luka went to the Lakers front office and said, you have to do all your business this offseason or I am not going to sign an extension next offseason, that then, to me, not entirely justifies, but at least gives some level of rationale for why the Lakers did this. So I'm with you. I don't think any of the moves individually are crippling, but I think the collection of them puts a ceiling on this team that I don't think gets them anywhere near where they want to be as a franchise.
I agree in terms of they're
well,
not.
Let me ask you this. Do you think this gets them closer to the Spurs or the Thunder?
It certainly gets them closer than not having Kessler, right? You know what I mean? So from that perspective, like, you're going to be better with Kessler than starting Ayton all season.
Is this year's Lakers team better than last year's Lakers team?
No. Because you're going to lose LeBron, you're going to lose Rui.
You lose LeBron, you lose Rui, you lose Marcus Smart, you lose Luke Kennard, you lose Jackson Hayes, you lose DeAndre Ayton.
Now,
you replace them with those rookies or those players and the rookie Cameron Carr they drafted out of Baylor.
I would say Sexton and Grimes are absolute upgrades over Smart and Luke Kennard. So I think they're improving a little bit on the margins. But, I mean, you lose LeBron. I mean, obviously it's crazy to say. I mean, he's 41, 42 years old, but, like, the guy still is incredibly impactful. So once you lose LeBron, you're going to be worse. I think it's an interesting conversation because I agree with you that it doesn't put them in the realm of San Antonio or OKC, but it reminds me a bit of the era when Golden State was so dominant where it felt like a lot of teams bowed out and a team like Houston went for it, right? And were within, a game of eliminating them. I don't think these teams are unbeatable. They're certainly better on paper, but is it more beneficial to sit back and what? Tank? I mean, so you say you don't go out and make these moves, or what? Let Reeves go? I mean, Reeves isn't going to do, Reeves probably isn't going to take you to the promised land as a number 2 on your team, but Reeves is a good player, right? So to just let him walk, I don't think that's necessarily going to put you in a better spot. So I think they were in a tough spot. I don't hate the moves. Like, I do think Kessler's a great pairing with Luka. It's the type of big that he likes playing with and that plays well with him. He's young, and they've set themselves up for, a 5-year window here if they can get Luka to stick around, where you've got Luka, Reeves, and Kessler. And I don't think that's a bad 3. So can they ever find a way to improve the rest of the roster? It's going to be hard now with no picks. So are they in jail? Like, yeah, they're probably in jail a little bit, but I don't think it's a terrible team. I think they can make a little noise, but it certainly isn't going to get them over the finish line, I don't think.
What would you envision the starting lineup being for the Lakers for game 1 of next season?
Well, it's probably going to be Luka, Reeves, Kessler, Grimes, and then whoever they want to be able to hopefully make a jump shot for them out there. So maybe Mamu or Laravia.
And who is guarding anyone on that team on the perimeter outside of asking Walker Kessler to essentially do all 4 other players' jobs on the defensive end?
Yeah, nobody. Okay. They so badly need that like true defensive wing that like Luka and Reeves cannot possibly be. And I mean, you'll get some great minutes out of my guy Colin Sexton, but
yeah, and I think that's where, defense might be important. I don't know. It's just sort of like, I feel like we spent the entire Victor Wembanyama MVP candidacy discussing the importance of defense, and Rob Pelinka looked at it and was like, I don't think it's that important. I would rather have, I think the Colin Sexton as a defender is one of the funniest, like, NBA Twitter arguments you're going to find, where you see people, because he had that clip when he was in high school where he like slapped the floor and got in someone's face, and everyone was like, oh my God, what a defensive ace. And just hasn't really been that in the NBA at all. Feels far more interested in trying to average 20 points a game than guarding anyone at the other end. So I guess compared to Luka and Reeves, and I guess with the Reeves, there is the segment of the Lakers media that is somewhat justified in saying Austin Reeves isn't Trae Young, but at the same time, he's not exactly someone you want guarding the other team's best player, especially if you have the level of burden he's going to be asked to carry on the offensive end, especially when Luka's out of the game. So we'll see. I felt the Lakers basically put themselves in a very similar position, if not slightly lower, to last year's team. And we saw in the playoffs the distance between the Lakers and the better teams in the conference.
Just to add,
I was going to say, to your point, yes, the Thunder and the Spurs could have injuries. My comment to that would be, how many injuries would it be required on either of those teams for the Lakers to act? Now, of course, Luka was out for the Thunder series. That cannot be overstated. Luka is a playoff killer. He's an incredible player, top 5, all of that. But I don't know.
I think when you have a player as good as Luka on your team, who we've seen have the ability to carry a team to a finals, you kind of have to just get as many good players as you can. And I think they did well in that aspect. Like, I do think Kessler's a good player. I think Grimes is a good player. I think Grimes is a plus defender as well. So, on the defensive end, he's going to help there. I think Sexton's a good player. So I think to sit on your hands and say, well, we can't beat San Antonio or OKC. Well, what the hell is the point then? Why even go out there, right? So part of me respects. I mean, Pelinka probably knows that he's towards the end of the line here anyway. So why does he really give a shit? Like at this point, right?
Nothing like spending someone else's money.
Yeah, man. Like who cares? Like if they sucked and won 40 games next year, like he'd probably be out the door. So I mean, fuck it, go get Kessler, go give up those picks. I mean, it's more of a hindsight of like, why the hell were you holding those picks for so long if you were going to just go blow them on Kessler? I mean, but I don't necessarily hate giving Luka a chance to go out there and be like, you know what, Luka, like show how great you are. Go ahead and carry us through a couple rounds here.
Yeah, and there was the Windhorst article that came out before the free agency where Luka had gone to the Lakers and given them a wish list, and it was an A-list center. And when Jalen Duren is on the market, would obviously make the assumption that Walker Kessler was the A-list center they were talking about. But that's a perfect segue into sort of what else we wanted to talk about on this week's show, which is teams that either made moves that we question or teams that were like, why are you not making any moves? Because if we're going to applaud the Lakers for at least going for it, there's a couple of teams here. I put a list of 5 together that I wanted to run by you and sort of say, what are we doing here? because, again, like the Lakers plan or not, there is a plan. The first team I want to start with where I'm not really sure there is a plan, and if so, I would love for anyone to come out and explain it, are the Detroit Pistons. So Detroit goes 60-22 last season. Feel good season, number 1 seed. Cade, first team All-NBA. Jalen Duren, All-NBA. Great story. Ends in a sour note at the hands of Cleveland. And comes into the offseason. It's like, okay, well, Detroit's clearly on the upswing. They'll re-sign Duren. They'll figure out a number that works. They have Cade, Duren, Asar Thompson, a couple of role players. We have been saying for months that Detroit is in desperate need of secondary ball handling. And their response to that was to lose Tobias Harris and to bring in John Collins. Outside of that, they flipped Isaiah Stewart for Isaiah Joe, and they re-signed Kevin Huerter. Not what I think most Pistons fans would expect after a number 1 seed when you have a guy that got MVP votes. The Duren thing, he's still sitting out in restricted free agency. I applaud Detroit in some ways for using the leverage and not just handing him a max straight away. There's, I imagine, an element of the fan base that's saying if you're going to sort of keep Duren out there in the wind, you should be doing more to try and upgrade the team around him so that once you do re-sign him, he's excited to be there. And they haven't really done that. So for you, as a Knicks fan, when we had been talking throughout the playoffs and I had said to you, Detroit was a team that you should worry about, especially more than Cleveland, you were like, I'm not worried about Detroit at all. Are you now even less worried about Detroit because of how they've gone about this offseason?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's mind-boggling. I mean, the criticism of them last season and the reason that I wasn't worried was they just didn't really have a secondary scorer that you were scared of. And they've now lost their secondary scorer who actually performed pretty well in the playoffs, had a few really big games for them and you know, got them as far as they did, getting past Orlando after going down. But I can't figure out what the hell their plan is, really. And I think Duren coming back is pretty much inevitable, right, with the restricted tag on him. It's just figuring out what the number is going to be. You know, if Duren can learn from where he, you know, fell in the playoffs and improve there, I mean, you know, hopefully for them, he can be their, you know, consistent secondary scorer, but not another guy to really initiate offense other than Cade. And we were talking about how none of the Lakers contracts particularly had any real sticker shock on them. The John Collins contract had sticker shock on it for me. I couldn't believe he got that number.
Yeah.
I mean, was he
3 years, $51 million.
50 million. I mean, was he not coming off a sub $10 million contract with the Clippers? Right?
He was actually coming off the end of his Atlanta max contract.
Okay. He was still
5 year, $125 million.
Okay.
So he's making less. I think where you're correct, though, is John Collins has played for several years at or below a $10 million a year player evaluation. So this was a guy that was on the Clippers that couldn't close games for a team that was trying to win. And that team wasn't even very good. They lost in the first play-in game to Golden State. So to go from you can't close a game in the 9-10 play-in to you're now going to be looked at, for all intents and purposes, the second leading scorer on the team that was the number 1 seed in the East last year, I was floored by it.
Yeah, I can't believe it. And it doesn't feel they haven't added any scorers on the margins, right? Like landing a bona fide number 2 isn't easy, right? Easier said than done. But where are they improving in any part of the team, right? They're basically running it back, replacing Tobias with John Collins, and that's mind-boggling. So we'll see if they can pull anything out. But
here's something I want to get on the record early, because we're now in the position where the class of 2021, the Asar Thompson, Amen Thompson Brandon Miller, Victor Wembanyama draft are now eligible for contract extensions this offseason. I've seen a lot of the reporting around the Pistons are concerned about Jalen Duren's fit for a team that's trying to win at the highest of levels. For me, if I'm a Pistons fan or I'm Pistons front office, I'm looking at it and saying, we can deal with Jalen Duren. He brings a lot to the table. What we can't deal with are Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson being two of our three highest paid players if we're trying to take that next step. I would be far more interested in trying to move off of Asar Thompson now, get something that makes a little bit more sense, and re-sign Duren, than run the risk of a team putting an offer sheet for Duren. Maybe he's unhappy. Maybe the Pistons can match it and he can be unhappy. The Pistons cannot match it. I'm stunned how untouchable Asar Thompson feels, because to me, that's the player where I'm pointing and saying he doesn't fit if the goal is to win the championship.
The problem is he's not what you really need in a modern guard, which is the capability to shoot the ball. Yeah. Right? And like Duren, you can live with, a 12-point playoff game because he is that prototype big right now where he's athletic, he can defend multiple positions, he can rim run, right? But I agree wholeheartedly. I'll be curious to see if they do end up giving him that long-term extension.
They absolutely will. I mean,
you think?
I'd like to have a pod maybe in the next couple of weeks where we go through and sort of do like mock negotiations for a couple of these rookie extensions. Some of them are going to be no-brainers. Victor is going to be a no-brainer. I would imagine at this point after the LaMelo Ball trade, I know you want to talk about the Hornets. We're going to bring them up in a little bit here. I would imagine the Hornets look at Brandon Miller as a guaranteed max candidate. I would expect the Rockets to come to terms with Amen Thompson at or near the max. But Asar Thompson is one of those very interesting cases of he's going to go to management and say, I've been a starter on a team that's only gotten better since I've been here. And if I'm the Pistons, I would be very skeptical. This actually leads to the next team. You had mentioned getting a number 2 or getting an elite high-end scorer is difficult. Well, Sean, the good news is last week, an elite high-end scorer went for the low price of Paul George and 2 first-round picks, talking about Jaylen Brown. So I want to throw you the Pistons. I also want to throw you the Houston Rockets as 2 teams that I had written down saying, if the price for Jaylen Brown was that low, you are committing franchise malpractice not putting in an offer that can beat the Philly offer. Out of Detroit and Houston, and we can talk about what those trades would look like in terms of outgoing salary, but if I were to just say the price was sort of fungible money and 2 first-round picks, which fan base should be more angry that they didn't get Jaylen Brown between Houston and Detroit?
Detroit for sure. Because Houston has put their chips on the table. Was there an avenue to make it happen for Brown? Probably. But they went and they got you Durant, right? They've improved this team to a level where you feel they're a competitor if healthy. Detroit, as you're saying, the opportunity was right in front of them, right? If we know they need that legit second scorer, there's your guy. And he gets traded in division, not that anyone really gives a shit about NBA divisions anyway, but no, he's sitting right in front of you. And I agree that I don't know. I haven't seen any reports on if they made an offer, what their offer would have been. But I do think you as a Clippers fan, with your inherent bias against Paul George and the way that he absolutely destroyed your franchise by getting rid of a future 2-time MVP in exchange for his services, may be a little biased in your opinion. I do think the Celtics feel Paul George can contribute this season, and that in the East, with how open it is, that they could make a potential run. I think they probably love his 3-point shooting.
How many games of Paul George and what steroid schedule is he on to make sure that he plays those games and plays them?
We'll get him juiced up because all they need him is for that playoff run, and they don't have a terrible team at all. I do think it would be hard to get a player that the Celtics feel would be more valuable in this upcoming season from Detroit back in that trade. So I think the draft pick compensation would have had to been a lot heavier. But nonetheless, I mean, clearly he was available.
What's a better trade package? Paul George and 2 first-round picks or Kevin Durant and 1 first-round pick?
Durant first, certainly.
Well, if you're Houston, but again, obviously there's a ton of different factors. Does Ime want to coach Jalen? Does Jalen want to be coached by Ime? Does that make sense? But again, I agree with you in the aggregate of Detroit didn't make a move. Houston has at least made a move. But where I also think is important to call out is Houston made a move. And if I see one more report that says the whole reason the Rockets season fell apart was because of one Fred VanVleet injury and him being back will magically cure all the problems, Fred VanVleet is a 33-year-old 6-foot point guard coming off of a torn ACL. I don't think he is the gap between losing to Luke Kennard and Marcus Smart in the first round and winning the West. And so if I'm Houston, I'm sort of like, we've already gone in and we're not even close. Does it make sense to run it back and just have the same situation happen again where we find out we're not close? Or should we just push a few more chips in and at least give ourselves a legitimate chance? Because I don't know about you, and we're obviously months away from doing preseason predictions. I won't have the Rockets as one of my top 4 or 5 likely teams to come out of the West.
No, you're absolutely right. And if Durant and 2 firsts was a package that could have gotten Brown, then agree. That's a huge missed opportunity. Because at the very least, you're resetting your calendar a little bit, right? Like you're getting 8 years younger there, 9 years younger. So, yeah, that's an interesting one.
Let's jump from 2 teams that in Detroit and Houston have legitimate championship aspirations. Always love using the word aspiration on this podcast. To 2 teams that we don't feel are as close. I want to start with a team that I have not really seen discussed all of that much, and I'm a little surprised why, but I want to get your feedback on it. So the Mavs take Cooper Flagg. Cooper Flagg is a power forward, maybe a small forward. I think the best parts of Cooper Flagg is a power forward. In the next draft, with your 1 lottery pick you get for the next 4 years, because obligatory mention, they traded all of their first-round picks to build around their last superstar, and Luka Doncic, who they got Anthony Davis for, who they unceremoniously cap dumped to Washington. Now I guess he's untradeable in Washington if you see any of those reports. Anthony Davis, not on the table. Doesn't make sense to me, but whatever. You get 1 lottery pick, you take Morez Johnson out of Michigan. Okay, I get maybe. The Mavs' real only long-term under 25 player besides Cooper Flagg is Derek Lively, who is still in a walking boot, which is a whole other concern. But now you have Morez Johnson. Okay, cool. That's sort of your 3, 4, 5, maybe, for the long term. Then you trade a first-round pick for Santi Aldama, who is also a power forward. So I guess if you're the Mavericks, I'm not in any way saying they were going to win the championship next year or the year after, but I'm just not really sure I understand the team. Like, PJ Washington and Najee Marshall are still here. Then Clay and Kyrie are over there somewhere. Max Christie's playing, but Ryan Nembhard had a nice season. I'm just not sure who's playing. Why are they playing together? How is this in any way helping Cooper Flagg's short, medium, or long-term development? So can you help sort of unpack and explain to me why the Mavericks think that we're just collecting as many power forwards as possible and that can help you win a championship?
The only rationale that I could kind of wrap my mind around is maybe their feeling is we want to see Cooper and Kyrie play together. What if they have magic? What if they're tremendous? It doesn't seem likely to me. You know, Cooper is still so young. He's already fantastic, but he's still so young. Kyrie's aging, and similar to what we were saying about VanVleet coming off a serious injury on the wrong side of 30. It feels like they have no direction. It doesn't feel like they know where they want to go. As you said, they're kind of screwed with the picks. So it would be hard to kind of reset the roster to a younger average age. But I mean, they certainly could dump Clay for something. They certainly could get a return for Kyrie. It kind of feels like they should probably just sell the house and suck. But without the pick,
and also evenly distribute. So what if I had to bet the starting lineup right now? I would say Kyrie, Cooper, Flagg, Daniel Gafford, probably then PJ Washington and Klay Thompson. And PJ Washington and Cooper Flagg, and to some degree at this point, Klay Thompson, their best position on defense are guarding power forwards. So who is guarding, again, back to the Lakers question, who is guarding anyone on the perimeter? And I guess if you're going to Cooper Flagg and saying your job is to guard Shea or to guard Anthony Edwards or guard Jamal Murray, I personally don't feel like that's the best part of Cooper Flagg's game. Now, that may be to some degree what Marez Johnson is there for. Hey, you're going to take all the difficult defensive assignments. You're going to sort of cover Cooper on that end. But I'm with you. I think that I'm surprised how little reporting I see about a Kyrie Irving trade and how sort of insistent Dallas seems on. Now, that might be he's coming off a torn ACL. They want to see him rehab his trade value, have a really good first couple of months, and then flip him at the deadline. But that's a team that I'm just not really all that certain in what they're doing. And you have one of those teams that you wanted to talk about because when we were texting before, you said you have no idea what the Charlotte Hornets are doing. So why don't you tell me a little bit about why and where you think the Hornets have gone wrong?
I'll be curious to see. I think the concept of selling high on LaMelo is not necessarily the worst idea I've heard. Mm-hmm. He's struggled so much with injury history. Anyone who's watched him play knows that there's those moments where you're just like, what the hell is he doing? This is a terrible basketball player. But there's also moments where you're like, holy crap, this guy is incredible. Mm-hmm. So, my issue with it is the return. And my other issue with it is, well, what do we envision the team as now, right? And I said to you, a team with Khan as their number one is not going to go too far. And you probably correctly noted that Brandon Miller is probably the guy now. So if they're looking to give more touches and more possession to those two guys and get the ball out of LaMelo's hands a little bit, I suppose it can make sense from that perspective. But I just think you finally have this half a season where you're growing this winning culture, to quote myself on the Knicks from a couple months ago that our good friend Elliot loves to bring up, and building that winning culture. Have
you trademarked that, by the way, yet? Winning culture?
I haven't yet, no.
Okay, that feels like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, we're building a winning culture. I should put it on.
James Dolan needs some money to make sure the Knicks can go into the second apron, so maybe involve him just so he can line his pockets a little bit.
That's a low blow after watching Mitch go to our rival, but
guy loves banging his hand on trucks.
Yeah, man, he was more upset that he damaged his truck than he was that he actually broke his hand. But that's just a truck guy, man. That's a good country boy right there. So, I don't know. What do you think? Did you like the moves for them?
I did. I especially like the LaMelo move in tandem with the Miles Bridges move. You had mentioned as a Knicks fan, I think a lot of fans of teams have had this where you sort of know to some degree that it's fool's gold. And I don't think the Hornets were at any point. I know they were every analytics, which, by the way, what a fucking offseason for the analytics nerds community. They are getting mentioned every single Twitch stream, every single podcast. They are having a field day. These are all the guys in school that never got girls. Well, boy, oh boy, the revenge of the nerds, am I right? And so while I see the analytics argument, and it was so hot at the end of the last season about the Hornets are the team you don't want to see in the playoffs. Here come the Hornets. The Hornets could pull off a first-round upset. Well, they got curb stomped in the play-in, which has sort of been a theme for them in the LaMelo era. And so I really respect the front office saying, we're good, but we're not that good yet. We're not beating the Knicks. Now they might beat the Celtics because I think anyone can beat the Celtics now. But they were not beating the Celtics in the Jays era. They were not going to beat Detroit or Cleveland or Indiana or let alone get out of that conference. Now you have these monsters in the West. So the LaMelo argument, similar to Kawhi, which we spoke about on last week's episode, the durability cannot be overstated with how important that is. That may be the healthiest LaMelo Ball we're going to see. Now, if LaMelo Ball turns around and plays 75 games every game for the next 3 years and plays 36 minutes a night, focused on both ends, to your point, it's not a good trade for the Hornets. But I can respect them looking at that team and saying, you know what? This is fun, but we have bigger goals than this. And so going for those grander ambitions, they now have 12 tradable first-round picks and 20 tradable second-round picks. I saw when they did the Dorian Finney-Smith sort of cap dump from Houston, where Houston traded Dorian Finney-Smith in 3 seconds for sort of a trade exception. You can't roster, obviously, 20 second-round picks. But I have no problem with the Hornets saying, this isn't it. Let's sort of reorient the team a little bit. I like them bringing in I like them re-signing Kobe White. I like them bringing in Naz Reid. I think the Miles Bridges trade was fantastic. I think that there's an argument that Royce O'Neal and Grayson Allen individually are just better than Miles Bridges if your goal is to win a playoff series or anything serious at the end of the season. So no issue. I wasn't going to pick the Hornets to make the second round with LaMelo Ball. If you're saying to me, hey, they could have been a 5 or a 6 seed next season, and now they might be a 10 or 11 seed, I'm not sure that really changes your life in the grand scheme. And if it better sets them up to try and eventually climb that ladder to get to a 1 or 2 seed, I think this trade puts them in that position.
And how do you envision that they would ever get there? Through using that trade capital to bring in another star? Or do you think Colin Miller could develop to the point where those two could lead a team that far?
No, I think it's certainly more the former than the latter.
Yeah.
The idea to me is similar to sort of what we talked about in the Lakers segment. You and I are closer than it may appear in the sense of you need someone like LaMelo. I just don't think it needs to be LaMelo. If you could get maybe a number 1 offensive option or just a little bit more of a all-around best player that you sort of can trust. We obviously talked at length during the finals about at the end of these games, the Knicks had Jalen Brunson, the Spurs had De'Aaron Fox, and as a result, the Knicks won in 5 games. I envision the Hornets front office looking at that series and saying, LaMelo Ball is not beating Jalen Brunson in a tie game with 5 minutes left. We need to collect as many assets as possible so that when that guy comes on the market, whoever it may be, that we can take a swing at that player, put them into the LaMelo role, hopefully give Miller and Khan a little bit of chance to explore the studio space in the meantime. And so when that opportunity presents itself, we're able to take full advantage, bring them into the team, and really then, make a run at it.
Yeah, I mean, they've got some good talent. They'll be a fun team this year. I mean, the starting 5 will be a fun team.
Starting 5 is good. It really is. And again, there's a lot of depth on that team. You're starting Kobe White, Khan, Brandon Miller, Naz Reid, and Musa Diabate. Off the bench, you have the 2 first-round picks they took in this most recent draft, Christian Anderson and Hans Steinbeck. You have Ryan Kalkbrenner as a backup center. You have Zion James and Liam McNeely are still around. You have, as we mentioned, Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. You have Dorian Finney-Smith. You have a lot of players around there. So we'll see. I think it's an interesting team. And very similar to where I came out with the Clippers last week, I'm not sure the team actually changed their short-term ceiling all that much, but I think it put them in a better position to explore their long-term ceiling. There's one more team before we get out of here that I want to talk with you about, and I brought it up on last week's episode as I'm not really sure who the Knicks are going to play in the Christmas game. And nothing like talking about Christmas Day scheduling in the middle of July. But Charlie had mentioned Cleveland. I felt that it was Indiana. And Charlie sort of looked at me and was like, Indiana, what the heck? And then you remember, like, oh, wait, this was a team that beat the Knicks in the playoffs, was in a Game 7 of the NBA Finals. Their best player tears his ACL, gets shingles, they lose the 5th pick in the draft, and everyone's sort of making fun of Indiana, but you look up, most of the team from the Finals roster is still there. They lose Miles Turner, but they bring in Ivica Zubac, which I would argue is an upgrade. What do you think of the Indiana Pacers heading into this season? They've signed Kelly Oubre. I thought that was a nice signing for them. He could make sense maybe as a 4th wing in that rotation. Starting lineup's going to be Halliburton, Nembhard, Nesmith, Siakam, Zubac, McConnell, Oubre, Toppin, Ben Shepherd's there, Jarris Walker's there, off the bench. Jay Huff is there, if that tickles your fancy a little bit. What do you think about Indiana? Why do you think not enough people are talking about Indiana as a legitimate threat in the East going into next season?
Just recency bias. It's they sucked so bad last year, but obviously without Tyrese for the whole season, you just kind of tend to forget them. But they're going to be good because they, as you said, they haven't lost anyone from that team that made the finals run. And other than swapping out Turner for Zubac, which as a Knicks fan, I rejoice because I no longer have to watch Miles Turner hoist 9 threes a game and miraculously make 5 or 6 of them every time they play the Knicks.
Or Aaron Nesmith become Klay Thompson, but he's still there.
I still have PTSD, but luckily this shirt with these shiny bedazzles makes me feel a lot better about it because they don't have one of those. But
really cool that rocking bedazzled T-shirts is back in 2026.
It's back, man. It's back. It's like the Ed Hardy era is all the way back.
That's it. You're going to be dressed up as Ed Hardy, Jalen Brunson for the next 10 Halloweens.
Oh, easily. No, they're good. They're good. And I agree. I think Oubre was a nice ad for them. They didn't really have a ton of flexibility in terms of being able to rock a ton of moves. But I don't think they needed to. So I think they're a threat. I think they're right there. Probably in the top 3 or 4 of the East, and the East is pretty open right now. And what I'd be curious to hear from you is we did so much talking about the Zubac trade, and with you being a Clippers fan and that pick ending up at 5 and conveying to the Clippers there. Do you think if they knew that pick would be 5, that they'd still make that trade? Because I think that with what we're saying, with how they are a contender and having Zubac is a lot more valuable than having the number 5th pick and taking a rookie player when you're trying to go win a championship. So do you think they would do 5 for Zubac?
I think they do 5 they might. I probably no. Because they would probably look at the 5th pick and say we might actually be able to get a center better than Ivica Zubac. Again, it depends. Zoo didn't have the best season last season. It wasn't as well as his sort of all-NBA potential season in the 24-25 season. Do you think that Jared Allen is better than Ivica Zubac? Maybe. Do you think that Walker Kessler is younger and that might be more valuable? Maybe. Would you rather have Alperen Şengün to sort of have that offensive dynamism? Maybe. Where you're correct, though, is if they get the 5th pick, they might trade it for Zubac, but I don't think they're putting on top of that Benedict Mathurin and an additional first-round pick after that. Sure. My guess is the trade would be 5 for Zubac, because if you look at the 5th pick, that was where the run of point guards began, and it doesn't really make sense to take Keaton Vogler, Darius Acuff, or Michael Brown, or any of those players when you have Halliburton and Nembhard. So they may have looked at that pick and said, this doesn't really do anything for us, and would have shopped it. I don't think it would have been as exorbitant of a price, which, hey, that's the Clippers' gain. And that's where Kevin Pritchard comes out and writes an apology on social media, which I've just never seen that before. Never seen that before. You need to have David Stearns write an apology to Mets fans on Twitter for the nightmare that is the Mets, but we'll move off of that. it would be 5 for Zubac. I don't think it would be 5 plus more assets,
Right.
even if Indiana felt that he was
Right.
the center that made the most sense.
But my point being, despite the value getting a little botched there, I mean, it's a roll of the dice, right? You think you're going to get the top 4 pick there, but I still think it puts them in a good situation coming into this season.
Yeah,
having Zubac, like I just think that their team is good. So I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed. You never want to see anyone, dealing with health stuff. That Tyrese is fully healthy with whatever this shingles thing going on that he has. But if he is fully healthy and ready to go, and the Achilles is fully repaired and he's 100%, yeah, they're a legit threat in the East for sure.
It will be a lot of fun. We have a whole lot of off season to go before we get there. Producer Sean, you're the absolute best. Thanks for jumping on. If you've listened this far, please tell a friend to check us out. Again, new recording schedule, episodes releasing Monday and Friday, every day on social, and follow along at CJ Hoops Pod. We will see you on Friday. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, brother. Always good to be on.